I don't care how big the church is, how small the church is. We have to fight against the narrative in our homes that the church is always trying to take more from dad and leave less for mom and the kids, right? Like anybody's job, there's demands. There's times where you got to say, buddy, you don't judge daddy's love by whether he comes to every baseball game, okay? Right. A lot of jobs are like that. Pastoral ministry's like that. But anytime we have an opportunity to put the church in just the most positive light to our kids and to say, isn't it incredible that we get to serve in a church that loves our family and wants their good? You know, that's the part where, you know, if you're in a small church and the deacon board, you would never go for this. This is the part they need to hear. How about sending a message to pastor's family, man, that you guys love him and you know that there is uniqueness in what he does. And just like a fireman needs to be able to do 100 push-ups, this guy needs to be able to take some spiritual blows. And one way to be healthy is to send them off for an extended time, and then make sure that we frame that for our kids as the blessing that it is, and let them just love the church.
This is Breaking Barriers, where we help pastors and churches grow so that they can go.
Hey guys, welcome to the Breaking Barriers podcast. My name is Pastor Andrew. I'm here today with Pastor Bobby. We have very important content. I think something that it matters a lot to us personally, and that is, we want to give some arguments, a defense, really just kind of put it out there that we unapologetically believe that a great staff benefit, a great tool that guys can use to keep staff long-term, I don't care if your church is huge or small, is the idea of some sort of rhythmic sabbatical every 7 years or so. I think that I've been in enough rooms now, Bobby, where bringing up sabbatical immediately creates a charge, because you've got these guys that are like, man, I'm a work dog, I could never take time off, you know, and the plumber doesn't get the sabbatical. Who do you think you are? And then you got other guys who have really affected me. I'll go ahead and say it. My eyes were really open to this concept when I had a conversation one time with former president of the Southern Baptist Convention. He's a mentor of mine now, named Bryant Wright, who I realized had kept his same executive team for like decades. I mean, like 30 years. Same guys rode with him on the whole run with Johnson's Ferry. And when I asked him, how did you do that? He said two things. Number one, pay people well. Number two, make them take a sabbatical every 7 years. And I was floored.
Yeah.
I'm like, you and I had not even thought about it a whole lot. I mean, the church we came from didn't really do a lot of that. I was probably more in the blue collar camp of like, man, my dad got up at 4 a.m. and he never had a sabbatical. But I had not really engaged it. And when he said that, the pragmatist in me and you awoke. And I was like, dude, if there's a way to keep guys for 30 years and this guy's done it, we got to talk about that. So we got his stuff. Anyway, we ended up going down this road. We think it's a huge tool that we use for keeping higher level staff long term.
Yeah, totally. I would say too that at this point, you know, Mercy Hill's going on 13 years, I think. We have experience with this because we've actually both taken sabbaticals, and we've had a lot of staff at this point take sabbaticals. Even not just like our highest level staff, but we've had, you know, multiple director level staff take sabbaticals. So I do think a lot of times people maybe that are kind of anti-sabbatical, or they're not sure about it or whatever, you know, they have opinions about it, but they actually haven't like either taken a sabbatical or had people around them that have taken a sabbatical. And I would say at this point, you know, because I took a sabbatical at year 7 and you did kind of across year 8 and 9, I'm about to take another sabbatical. And pretty much most of our executive team at this point has taken a sabbatical and are still here at Mercy Hill. I don't know. I think it gives us some kind of clear-headedness around this topic.
Yeah, so we're going to get into some reasons why we think it's a really good thing. We're not saying everybody's got to do it or not do it. We don't. But what we're saying is we think this is a really good tool for keeping staff healthy and keeping them retained. I'm not saying you're in sin if you don't do this or something like that. Not at all. We don't see like a biblical mandate necessarily to do what we're talking about, but we just are pragmatic enough to say, man, this can be really used in a good way for staff retention, keeping people healthy, not burning people out, and they're changing jobs every 2 years or whatever. Before we get into that, though, let's just describe what we mean, because people have said sabbatical, and, it means a lot of different things. So just for us, go ahead and define it, Bobby. What does it mean for us in our staff handbook, and what can people expect?
Yeah, so I would say this has changed a little bit over time, but for us, in general, it's, every 7 years for director level staff and above, there's going to be some sort of extended time off that is going to be for director level staff that don't have pastoral duties. It's going to be in that 4 to 5 week range. For director level staff that also have pastoral duties on top of their job, or their job essentially is kind of more in the pastoral vein of things, it's going to be 8 to 10 weeks off. And there's also going to be some sort of financial component where we're going to come behind them and help to fund what it is they're doing. That's typically going to be a month and a half of what their normal salary is.
Yeah, and it's so again, they're going to be paid like they're on staff, even though they're taking time away. But then we're also going to give more than that, like you said, month and a half salary in order for them to fund the things that they're going to do. Now, all this, they're getting approved. They have a plan and all that. But generally, we're not asking them, to go and take 7 or 10 to 12 weeks off so that they can write a book.
Right.
Or they can produce something for the church. Instead, what we're saying is, our hope is that you would go away 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever that is, and you would come back incredibly refreshed, recharged, sharp, healthier physically, have put a bunch of goodwill and credit in the tank for your kids and your wife and all of that, or husband. And the idea is that you would be ready to run hard in the next season. The reason I bring that up is I think some of the hang up that people have with sabbatical is that they think we're talking about a reward for somebody having stayed for 7 years, which is not what it is at all, right? It's not really a reward so much as it is an opportunity for people to refresh, recharge, energize, get sharp, stay healthy, and then get ready to enter back into the fray to be a better version of themselves, stronger relationship with the Lord, so that they can run harder.
Yeah, I would just say, in terms of that first principle, I really just, having seen people go through this, I really think it just makes people better. People just get better by having a sabbatical over long periods of time. Because just the basic principles, we all understand, okay, I can't work 24 hours a day. I'm going to sleep at night. I'm going to take one day off, the weekend. There's obviously lots of principles in the Old Testament, letting the land rest, different things around. Man, rest can be very helpful for people emotionally, physically, psychologically, spiritually. Right. And that's really all it is. A lot of times people come back and they're just a better version of themselves because they've been able to rest. And and for people like you that are doing preaching and a lot of creative work, there's so much secular kind of science and studies out there of how rest can help the brain somewhat reset in terms of that real kind of creative types of thinking.
Yeah, so on our staff, we would want people, it's just another added rhythm, It's like, hey, we want you to be reading your Bible and praying every day. Want to gather with the saints and sing and hear preaching every week. We're probably going to take some type of staff retreat once a year. We're going to do some stuff around holidays once a year. Those are kind of yearly things. And then, hey, in that longer term, once every 7 years, there's another rhythm that we want to add in. And that rhythm for health, for physical health and spiritual health and familial health, is that we want you to take this time away. And, that people make a plan. We don't want to be rigid around what that is, but we do expect people to use it for their health, spiritual and physical. So, we do want to know, man, we are going to be doing some reading. We are going to be reading this, getting in the Word, we are going to be focusing on our physical health and doing some things like that. Man, having fun, making sure that we're reconnecting with the family and all that, and we want them to come back incredibly charged up. So for this podcast, we've got 3 things that we want to talk about that really we believe are good, healthy, pragmatic reasons for your church. I don't care if you're one pastor and you have a deacon board and that deacon board needs to listen to this podcast maybe, or, huge mega church, whatever. three reasons why we think it's really good to think about adding this into your staff culture and staff structure. The first reason is people get healthier.
Yep.
It's a long-term health, health-oriented kind of long-term spiritual, emotional health. It promotes that. And man, that should be what we're after. Now, Bobby, I want to throw it to you because here we've all heard this. I ain't taking no sabbatical. You think that electrician in my church gets a sabbatical or whatever like that? And, I think you and I kind of, I don't know, man, we're both pretty analytical. We're like, I mean, I can just see so much logical problems with that, like right off the bat. But man, that's a common thing. Hey, man, that electrician doesn't get it. Why would I take it? My deacons would never let me have that. Such a limited mindset. I mean, what are some reasons why we're like, hey, you can work to overcome that and get away from that guilt gene that you just put on yourself about the electrician or whatever?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's ultimately about like, hey, what is going to be the most effective thing that we could do to create long-term staff health and to keep people on our staff for a long period of time? I think sometimes people will say, yeah, the average person in your church doesn't get this or, this. And in some ways, and I've actually talked to some, CEOs where it's like, hey, well, maybe they should actually be doing that, because like the average person in your church, if you use that logic, okay, this person that works for Microsoft, whatever, they don't get a sabbatical. But you also say, okay, well, in your church, the average person that works for the average business in your church, what is the turnover there? Like how long do people stay at jobs? Right. And especially since COVID, we all know that the turnover at jobs has gone up and up and up and up. And I would just say part of the reason is like, man, people are going to kind of opt into their own sabbatical if they don't have one, and it's like, hey, I'm going to get a severance and I'm going to take 6 weeks off and then I'm going to go try to find another job that pays higher or whatever. And it's like, that's partly what we're just trying to prevent, because we think people really look forward to these, having like multiple staff that have worked for me over the years that I know they're getting to take one. They just really look forward to it. And it just emotionally, spiritually, physically, you don't realize it sometimes in ministry or any job really, but sometimes you just find yourself just kind of grinding over the course of like multiple years. And you try to do the rhythms that you need to, the spiritual rhythms, you try to do the physical rhythms, but sometimes you're just running on like adrenaline and vision and excitement. And that could take you a long way and it could take you really far. But at times, I mean, you see this with, military guys and operating and deployments, like, eventually sometimes it just like running off of like, man, the church is growing and adrenaline and excitement, it can catch up with you and it can really begin to hit back. Mm-hmm. And so the sabbatical, emotionally, spiritually, it just gives people some extra time to be like, all right, man, you let some of your health slip. You've not been eating that well, man, some spiritual stuff. Maybe, you're still reading your Bible, but you're not really doing it the way you once did. Maybe you're not sleeping as much as you should. It just allows people a reset. And a lot of times, when done well, people come back just in a lot better health.
Yeah, I think people, for people to go down the road of sabbatical, they're going to have to get over the pride of the blue collar work ethic and work gene, that guilt gene that comes with that. Because we do have a lot of pride in it. I'm a chief offender of that. Mm-hmm. I really think if you grew up with a dad that got up at 4:00 in the morning to do something with his hands or drive a truck or whatever, you kind of, the rest of your whole life, you think, man, I've got to match that. I've got to work that hard. I've got to grind like that. The problem with that is at some point, if you really want to grow your leadership, you're going to have to say, man, is the grind actually what's going to take me to the next level of leadership, right? Mm-hmm. And in our case, doing primarily thought work in a church with, and I know we're going to talk about this, with uniquely spiritually damaging stories, okay? I mean, just weight of I often tell people, I'm like, hey, how many absolute freaking crises do you know in people's lives right now? Most people are like, I could tell you 2 or 3. I'm like, okay, I know a lot more than that, and you do too. That's what pastors carry. I mean, everything that's going on in terms of just the hardest freaking stuff in people's life. There a lot of that stuff weighs on you. Okay, if it is a different type of job, you kind of got to get over that blue collar thing, and you got to say, wait a minute, what actually is going to help serve the purpose that I'm going after here? The purpose I'm going after here, as we have stated, is staff retention and long-term health. Well, I think we're going to have to get over the pride of, man, I grind and realize, okay, is a sabbatical a lever that I can pull? It's no different in a lot of ways than telling people to take all their vacation. I got coaching from Sean Lovejoy one time for a few years, or for like a year, and it was great. And it was so funny, like, we're in a growing church. The first question he asked me was, hey, who's accountable to make sure you take all your vacation? Now, that ain't like a right or wrong. There's no Bible verse that says how much vacation to take.
Right.
I mean, not, but generally we would all accept that principle of, hey man, I'm not sure if the plumber gets 2 or 3 weeks of vacation or not, but a pastor should take that because of what they're dealing with. Well, that's the same thing we're saying here. Every 7 years, you need to step back and take something that's a little more extended than that and try to make sure you're in a healthy place to fight for the next 7 years.
Yeah, I just think going back to what you were saying, just kind of some of the unique balances of like pastoral ministry, we're not saying being a pastor is harder than any other job. I think of jobs where people travel all the time and have to be away from their family. I'm like, man, I would hate that. That would just be terrible. People do it. People do lots of different jobs. People do hard labor type jobs. People do hard jobs in terms of just mentally. There's jobs where there's a lot of pressure put on people. You think of maybe like a lawyer or something like that. I just think one of the things that is unique that I do think the sabbatical helps with, just some weird mental kind of shifts can happen in pastoral ministry, especially if your church is growing, and especially if you're in a higher leadership role, where it's like in one moment you're sitting with your elder board or whoever, and you're talking about stuff that feels like normal business type stuff. You're talking about, man, the budget, are we running a profit or a deficit? Man, we're thinking about debt service, and we're looking at our balance sheet and stuff that would be like super normal and maybe a normal job. And then the next moment, you're having a meeting with somebody that's in absolute crisis.
Yeah, marriage falling apart, or kid walked away from the faith, or just like that.
Or you have somebody send you an email saying, man, we're leaving the church and here's why we're leaving. And it's just like, there's certain emotional aspects of that where it's like your mind sometimes, like we knew what we signed up for, but your mind, you struggle to balance that stuff sometimes, because, you're just like doing normal business stuff, maybe that's already hard to turn off when you go home.
Right.
But you throw some emotional stuff on top of it, or somebody that you've been friends with for years, and then all of a sudden they have some big issue with the church, or all of a sudden, man, they're cheating on their wife or whatever. It's like, it's just hard to, and sometimes taking some extended time off just allows your brain and your nervous system and spiritually, it just allows things to just kind of calm down a little bit.
I love the way you said it, because I think sometimes pastors can sound whiny, like, man, my job's harder than everybody else's. And that really, that's not what we're saying. Number one, I don't know if that's true or not, because I haven't been, a fireman or a cop, or I've never done those things. So I don't know. But I will say that I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. If I was a fireman, well, we have a ton of firemen at our church. Most of them, almost all of them, are pretty physically fit. I mean, part of their deal when they're at the station is like, man, I'm going to work out. Why? Well, my job is pretty physically demanding, Right. I've got to be able to scale this ladder and break through a window and carry somebody and firemen carry. And so I have to build my body in a way that makes sure it meets the demands of the job. And so there's things I need to do. And I think that's what we're trying to get at, is like, hey, there is a spiritual fortification that needs to come with the job that we're trying to do that is maybe different or unique. And not the only way, and it's not wrong to not do it, but we have found that a great way to try to do that is an extended time off where, if it's a pastor, a man, his wife, his kids, if he's married, they all understand this is what the next 2 months of our life is for. It's not a reward for something, or, but the church loves my dad, and the church wants him to be healthy so that he can keep doing his job in a great way. And, man, it's just incredibly impactful. And I think that actually leads to number 2. I mean, we feel that this is a good, have a good benefits package, right? Maybe you have a good vacation policy. Maybe you try to pay well. Well, right alongside of that is, guys, we're going to try to make sure that you're running hard over the long haul. And part of that is a sabbatical package. And so we think it's a good retention tool. And what way, there's high turnover in church stuff. Mm-hmm. So if we can find ways to try to have retention, especially at the higher levels of leadership, that seems like it's going to be a win.
Yeah, I mean, I want people to hear, like, if you're listening to this podcast, we're not trying to make someone feel guilty around this. Like, we're trying to offer something that we feel like has given us a competitive advantage. So, if you're constantly thinking about staff benefit stuff as like, what's the least that I can do, or what's the least that we can get by with and maybe keep some of our staff, I honestly think you're not thinking about it the right way in 2025.
Yeah.
Like we are trying, not that we're competing against any churches, but we are trying to have a competitive advantage against the marketplace the best that we can. We are trying to keep our people the best that we can. And to me, if there was only that principle, I think we would probably do sabbaticals. Like if it was just, oh, you mean we potentially could lose somebody at year 3 or 4, but because we have a sabbatical at year 7, they choose to stay, they get refreshed, and they just choose to keep plugging away here. And that allows us to keep people for 10 years or 15 years. That alone, I think, would be good enough of a reason. And, I thank God for this, and we want to have humility around this, but God has really, I think, blessed us in this area. I was just thinking the other day, my admin, Sarah, she's coming up on, I think she just passed 10 years at Mercy Hill. The church has only been 13 years, and we have a large handful of staff now that have been here for almost 10 years, even though the church is only 13 years old. I'm like, that's pretty good. And she's taken her and her husband's also on staff. They're doing, I think, 5 weeks this summer, and they're just super excited about it. They've been looking forward to it. They've been planning it. They're really excited about it. I have no doubt for them, it's like a retention tool.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I think one of the things that we've learned, and they're Sarah and them, their kids are a little bit too young for this, but I know this was my experience. I think it was your experience. Guys, I don't care how big the church is, how small the church is. We have to fight against the narrative in our homes that the church is always trying to take more from dad and leave less for mom and the kids, right? And man, we like anybody's job. There's demands. There's times where you got to say, buddy, you don't judge daddy's love by whether he comes to every baseball game. Okay, right. A lot of jobs are like that. Pastoral ministries like that. But anytime we have an opportunity, to put the church in just the most positive light to our kids and to say, man, isn't it incredible that we get to serve in a church that loves our family and wants their good? That's the part where if you're in a small church and the deacon board, would never go for this. This is the part they need to hear. Is like, man, how about sending a message to pastor's family, man, that you guys love him and that there is uniqueness in what he does. And just like a fireman needs to be able to do 100 push-ups, this guy needs to be able to take some spiritual blows. And one way to be healthy is to send them off for an extended time. And then make sure that we frame that for our kids as the blessing that it is. And let them just love the church. Let those kids say, man, what a cool church we go to, that we're at the beach now, for a week. And it's because they want dad to be healthy. I just can't think of, there's some things that you just kind of, when you say it out loud, you just think, yeah, man, that sounds really healthy, and I feel like that's one of the things for me in the staff retention bucket is, hey, this is a great way for us to help our families on staff teach their kids that the church is not just out to get something from their dad, but the church really loves them and loves their family.
Yeah. And thinking about it being just like, okay, this is a benefit, because we're trying to have a competitive advantage to have a really good staff, because that's going to make our church better and that's going to help us do the mission. Like when you think about the cost and people just immediately go to like, well, how expensive is that? How much does that cost? Well, you think about in this environment, if you have somebody at a director type level, I don't know, you have a staff member, they're making 40 grand or 50 grand or whatever, and you lose that person, and then you can't rehire somebody for the next 6 months. The cost of that, I think people don't really calculate a lot of times. The actual cost of that, it could be just to get somebody replaced a lot of times could be literally be equal to somebody's salary. And we, for whatever reason, people don't calculate that stuff. So the idea that like, man, you're going to pay someone a month and a half of their salary every 7 years, and that's going to help retain somebody. The ROI on that,
right. We just ask the wrong question sometimes,
Totally.
But you're right. Totally, man. And I think too, one thing we'll say, we'll get into this last point, but it it feels short-sighted when we would say, oh man, I never, it's like, are we willing to have the staff turnover, or are we trying to build a team that can run a long way? Like kind of you're a distance runner. It's like, what we're trying to do is see how far, we can go. And it's not a sprint, and it seems like strategic times that are just focused on spiritual and physical health and emotional health. I don't know, man, feels like we're going to be able to go a lot farther with people that are healthy like that.
Yeah. And we all see this, no matter where you live, no matter what your city is. A lot of churches can kind of implode on themselves from just the lack of consistency from the staff turnover. Mm-hmm. We've seen this in Greensboro. You have different other large churches, like people come and people go and people leave the staff. And I mean, that's not going to make your church like grow. Like, you're going to have to be effective at the mission, but long term, I mean, organizations that grow really large, it's just that consistency year over year over year. Yeah. And I thank God, and we try to, say this with humility. I think that's one of the things that's begun to really benefit Mercy Hill. Mm-hmm. You have been here 13 years. I've been here 13 years. A lot of our staff, that I don't know. It's hard to explain. That gives people in the church a level of like a comfort level when they don't see a bunch of turnover on the staff. So yeah, I just think it's a really, really good retention tool.
Especially when you're talking about senior and executive levels, because the reality is, like, man, you could have a lot of associate and director levels turning over, which may not even be a bad thing. It's like, man, they're going to plant churches. Right. There wasn't a spot here, but they got an upward mobility thing in another church, and we're the type of church that's like, dude, we want to help you with that. I mean, I don't want to lose anybody, on the same level, in like a parallel move, But man, if we got people that have a chance to step up their leadership, I don't want to lose anybody, but I'm so grateful for them and happy for them. We want to see them go. But yeah, man, when you're starting to talk about senior director, executive team, lead team, I just think that whole, we overestimate what we can do in 5 years, we underestimate what we can do in 20. Part of that is just long-term health, doing the same things day in and day out, and just keeping the flywheel moving, and I really agree with you on that. So the third thing that we would say really, points to that is just kind of like, man, sabbaticals signal that you're playing the long game. You're not playing a short game. You're not trying to shortcut your way into health. To me, it just shows that you're playing a long game. You're deciding to plant things that are going to take years to come to fruition, but that's okay. When somebody takes a step back, for 10 weeks, you're taking a short-term pain for a long-term gain. And I just think there's a lot of health and wisdom in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the idea of like sabbaticals really reinforcing this. You said this a lot early on at Mercy Hill, and I remember this. I don't know if you were just trying to make yourself feel better because it felt like maybe things were going bad at times, but you would say, man, we're going for 30 years, not 3 years.
Yeah.
And what you meant is, man, it's okay if it's not going like perfect right now. Like, the goal is for not everything to be perfect a week from now or 2 weeks from now. Like, man, let's operate like with kind of keeping our heads straight, right? Because like in times of like chaos, you can sometimes make bad decisions kind of in the short term, and it doesn't help you kind of for that long term. And so keeping your head on straight and thinking about like, okay, how's this going to affect us 3 years from now or 10 years from now? Hey, like, man, the finances aren't exactly where we want them to be, but man, we're playing the long game. We could see a pathway forward. There's just a maturity about that I think you actually need to really truly make it to that next level. Like, there is something for, man, just grinding and playing that short game, and it's all about this week, it's all about this Sunday. And a lot of times there's people on our staff where I'll say, man, that's kind of young man's energy or young woman's energy. Right. We were 28, we planted the church. You can only do that for so long, where it's just like, man, I'm grinding this week. Eventually you got to kind of pick your eyes up and be like, okay, man, let's think about 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And you'll hear a lot of guys that are in this kind of, man, let's just kind of grind it type culture, where they don't mean to do this, but I think what they reveal is that their leadership or their organization hasn't gotten to the maturity level that it needs to be if they can't lose somebody for 8 weeks, you know?
Right.
Because, man, when you're really operating and you're really setting yourself up for long-term success, 8 weeks is really, truly not that big of a deal.
Right. Yeah, it's man, I could never be gone for that long. It's like, how much of a scarcity mindset is that?
Right.
Really? You know, like, if we want to get into an abundant, prosperous kind of mindset, it's like, dude, if I'm going to plant some things here, that are going to yield a way greater fruit than whatever the 8 weeks we were, the project we were going to get done. And I mean, we have enough data now. Like, we could just tell. I mean, the 10-week sabbatical just affects the church zero. I mean, it doesn't matter who it is. It's like me, I've gone, you've gone, our entire executive team's gone, a lot of our directors have gone. I mean, 99% of the literal people in the church don't even know you left. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but we can never do it because the church is going to fall. It's just such a scarcity kind of thing. And, I think there's benefit to this idea of the 30-year, not 3, even if you're one of the guys that are really not wired for it. Because I do believe that. Like, I think there are guys, I have met some of them, that maybe truly, honest to God, they just have a work and a drive that's just different, maybe, and man, they're doing their Sabbath during the week, and that's enough. And the Bible doesn't tell you to go take 3 months off, so they're never going to do it. And I'm not going to say that's wrong or right. But I do wonder if guys like that are at the top are considering the fact that most people under
not
them,
wired like them.
Most people under them are not Superman like that, And so, like, what can you even? Could we have the humility to even say, like, hey, I'm going to take this time off. I'm not going to make everybody else feel bad because they're weak and they have to take it off. But I'm going to take this time off to set an example of what it looks like for the mere mortals like me and you that may actually need it.
And I would say for us, man, it is so strategic because one of our staff values, we got 4 staff values. The value is, we don't say we want our staff to be driven. We say that our staff we put the word extremely in front of it.
Right.
Extremely driven. So, man, you're not going to stay on staff here long term if you're not extremely driven. It's just the way that we're wired. And so having sabbaticals, like, we have to pull our people back more times than not. There's guys on our executive team like, man, if we don't say, hey, man, just calm down, it's going to be fine. They're just going to run. And eventually that's going to hurt them long term. And so the fact that our staff knows that we take sabbaticals, it's that balance of, man, we're going to be super driven. We're not going to hire somebody that's not driven. But on the other hand, we're playing the long game. They care about me as a person. This really just speaks a lot to people, and it helps them remember, man, it's not just about what you accomplish over the next 90 days. Yeah. 'Cause that's kind of immature long term. It's about, man, what do you accomplish over a 2, 3, 4 year period, not just this week, next week.
Right.
And I just think the sabbaticals speak a lot to that.
Yeah, and it's funny too. Like, man, sometimes you'll see guys be like, I would never take a sabbatical, and I'm like, yeah, I can tell. You know what I'm saying? Like,
looks like it.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of like, yeah, I can see that, man. Like, you didn't have to tell me. Not everybody. Right. And I got a couple guys in my mind that I've heard talk about sabbaticals. They're not going to do it, and I'm like, man, judge the fruit, not the watering schedule. Like, dude, their life looks pretty good. Like, they look healthy. They look like they have healthy marriages. Maybe they really don't, but I will say more times than not, when I've heard guys get like super snippy about it, I was a little bit like, yeah, man, I can kind of tell you need a break, know? So it just is what it is. But yeah, I think the long term, man, 30 years, not 3, we're in it for the long game. That is just so important. And circle all the way back as we close, that was Bryant Wright's point. Because my exact question to him was like, how do you get a group of guys? Now, I don't know how their directors turned over and all that, but how do you get some guys at the very top of your organization that want to run with you for the long haul? And one of two answers is take sabbaticals. To me, that's almost a good enough reason to consider it.
Totally.
Yeah.
You
want to talk mergers?
Yeah, great discussion, man. So, hey guys, wanted to put one thing on your radar today. We have, we do these one days that are in person here at Mercy Hill. We just do them on different topics. A lot of times that people have been reaching out to us about. And so we have our next one coming up soon. You can check that out on our website or our Facebook page. And it's going to be a one day on church mergers. And, man, churches all across the country are closing their doors probably faster than any other time in the history of the United States. And so we have gone through multiple mergers. And so we just want to talk about how do you have those conversations? How can you have the biggest kingdom impact and not just be, feel like you're trying to steal somebody's building or something like that? And because I'm sure, man, most people that listen to this, your church is going to be approached at some point in time about a merger, or you're going to be thinking about it. So, man, yeah, encourage you to check that out.
All right, thanks.